Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for being here again for our weekly chit chat. I'm Josh Tagg, Mortgages for Less at Axiom, and Jay Lewis at REMAX. Jay, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Josh. Thanks.
So we were talking about some of the stats in the Edmonton market. You shared with me a couple images or a couple stats here, and I wanted to ask you about that. It does show on here that there's a lot of new listings, there's a lot of sold all in the last 30 days, but there's that number there at the bottom called back on market. I feel like there's some sort of story there. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this does tell a story, but we just got to be careful how we interpret the data, right? So here, this is like for the last 30 days. This is in Edmonton. 1,530 new listings have come on the market. Right now, I think we're sitting just north of 3,800 listings. So of the 3,800, 1,600 have sold, which means that there is still some inventory, but it's kind of a tough buyer market right now. But that doesn't mean that sellers aren't suffering a bit too. And that's where this back on market number is something that we need to talk about. So in the last 30 days, this back on market number, that's what it's talking about. So it says that these are houses that have gone pending. So they've received an offer. Buyer and seller have agreed on the price, maybe on the conditions, right? But for whatever reason, the buyer couldn't buy the home. And so it went back on the market. It is a little bit, doesn't tell the whole story though, because of the 409 that are back on the market, 189 of those homes are back pending. So there's, back on market, I would say, if we're going to say about the, just talk about the 3,800 on that are actively listed, 220 of them are back on the market after being pending.
Okay, so I think there's an example here you wanted to use to explain that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So this, this property here listed for $335,000, and then it went pending. Not too long after being listed, right? So it was in November 2nd. It went pending after being listed October 24th. It went pending for the typical time, and it went back on the market on the 17th of November. And on November 28th, it went back pending again. So basically, probably the first buyer, wasn't able to satisfy, went back on the market, got shown again, new buyer stepped in.
Okay, that's really cool. I see the price stays the same, but that's because for pending, we don't actually see what the accepted price is, right? So if this pending works out, we'll see eventually the final price of that home, but that data is not yet available.
No.
Okay, is there anything else that is interesting going on in the market that we should talk about? I think there is something about the listing prices.
Yeah, so that's another big common misconception that I have dealing with my buyers. Really, it's like, well, the media would have us believe that there, it's kind of like a feeding frenzy out there, and you can kind of just offer what desperate sellers, high interest rates. We're not seeing that at all. We're seeing actually Edmonton real estate agents are actually quite responsible. I think we have a good grasp on what the values are, and we're selling really close to the list price or the asking price. So we're trying to educate our sellers as, this is what your home is worth in the current market. As you can see here, this kind of tells us some numbers. So in the last 30 days, I pulled some data, 3-bed, 2-bathroom homes from 350 to 500 price point range. That's a very common sort of demand of our market right now. And you can see 97% of the list price is what it ends up selling for. What does that mean? Well, on an average, the sellers are saying we want, almost $430,000 for our home. And the buyers are saying, well, we'll agree to pay about 419 in this case, right? Round up a little bit. So very, very close. You're not seeing huge, massive, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 drops like the media might get us to believe.
I guess, they do talk about there being the market decreasing in some of the parts of the country. And I think that is, again, those big markets that the media likes to talk about. Because Edmonton seems like it's been pretty steady over the last couple of years in a way that other parts of our country haven't been. So this is actually pretty great. 97% average sale price or median sale price compared to the listing or asking prices. I guess if something's listed well, then it will sell well.
Well, you can, I mean, yeah, that's exactly it. But you can also I guess we can pick and choose what data we want to talk about. If we wanted to look at the two extremes, it says, the highest sort of difference here was there was a home listed for 545,000 and it did sell for 500 grand. So we could say,
Right.
we found houses that have had a $50,000 reduction almost, right? But then there's another one that was listed at 347,000, sold for 350. Well, we could also say, well, homes are selling for over asking price, right? So it depends how we want to paint the data. I would just say this tells us the truth that if a house is priced correctly, buyers are educated, they'll pay what it's worth. So as long as realtors, we, price the home correctly, it's going to sell. And that's what the majority of the market is doing right now.
Okay. And that days on market, like, are things selling quickly? It says average is 37 days, but some of them are as high as 150 days.
Yeah. Again, high and low, right? So that low number, that number one is probably that 347 for 350, a little underlisted, try to get some data, right? 156 very well could have been that high, right? Way overpriced, took a while.
So taking about a month, is that pretty typical here in Edmonton, or is it slow or fast?
It's pretty average right now. So I definitely say 30 to 40 days is pretty comfortable for the most part to sell your home.
Awesome, man. Well, you know what, Jay, I really appreciate that quick update. Hopefully that's useful to our friends in Edmonton who are looking at selling, as well as those who are looking at buying here in the coming months. So I guess we'll do more of this same time next week with a new story.
Yeah, I think next week we'll talk about sort of finding common ground and what does that look like for buyers and sellers, and we'll try and tell a story of maybe a couple case points that we can find in our market.
Okay, awesome. Looking forward to having that chat with you again next week. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Josh.
Bye. 7 minutes.